And welcome to another Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25. I'm Dean Beckman, joined by Sports Information Director Donnie Netto from St. Mary's. This is the sports show devoted exclusively to St. Mary's University athletics, the programs, and the individual teams and players as well. And Donnie, today we're going to be focusing a little bit more heavily on men's hockey. We have an assistant coach, the main assistant coach, Ben Kinne, coming in to join us on the program a little bit later on.
Yeah, it'll be fun to have an assistant coach. You know, we've always talked off camera about the idea of bringing in an assistant coach, and you know, we always get the head coach's perspective, and I think sometimes it's kind of neat to get an assistant coach's perspective on you know, day-to-day operations, game time decisions, and you know, having Ben with us is going to be awesome. And then I know that Ricky Palermo did a great piece on Ben's brother, Bob, so it'll be kind of fun to even talk to Ben a little bit about what it's like to coach his brother.
And of course, Bob was a previous guest here on the Cardinals Nest this year, so he'll be the second Kinne to be in studio.
Absolutely.
So that'll be some fun. But first, Donnie, let's take a look at the past week here in St. Mary's athletics, and another big week for the women's basketball team. They remain atop the conference standings, though they are tied now, and there's a lot of teams nipping at their heels. It's kind of a log jam at the top.
It really is. And I guess if you looked at the preseason predictions, it's really, things are kind of falling right about where people kind of expected teams to be. And right now the Cardinals are tied with St. Thomas atop the conference, but like you said, there is a log jam right behind them. You've got Gustavus and St. Ben's are right there. Concordia is playing very well right now, so it's going to be a dogfight these last 2 weeks to see to see where the playoff teams kind of just flush themselves out, and some very big games for the Cardinals coming up. St. Kate's and St. Ben's on Saturday, and then you've still got Bethel on the schedule, St. Olaf, and St. Thomas again, another shot at the Tommies. So it's going to be a tough couple of weeks for the Cardinals, and hopefully they can kind of get things going again. I know they picked up a nice win against Carleton on Saturday, but it certainly wasn't as easy as they made it look the first time that they played Carleton. And you know, talking to Coach Poller, he made the comment that it seems like every team in the last 4 or 5 games, their best player is having a career night against St. Mary's. So you know, they're experiencing what it's like to have a target on their back, and teams know that they're one of the teams to beat if they want to move up in the conference standings. So they've got to learn what it's like to play against everybody's best, because they're going to bring it every single night.
Right, and now we get a little bit later into the season, and so that's a good test for some of the younger players just from an endurance standpoint. But you're right, they had a nice comeback win last week after losing at home to Augsburg. Those home games now become increasingly important, and I know they have another one a Wednesday night. Last night they had another home game. So the way their schedule shapes out from here, Donnie, do they have a lot of road games, home games? What do they have coming up?
Yeah, after the Wednesday night against St. Kate's, they've got one more home game, and that's a week from Saturday against St. Olaf. So the majority of their games now are going to be on the road, and they're going to have to, you know, be the road warriors. And they, you know, the final game of the season is at St. Thomas. And you know, as Coach Poller, I probably scold me, but if you're looking ahead, that's going to be a huge game against the Tommies, because that's you know, right now who they're tied with in first place. And if the Cardinals can take care of business, that's going to be the game that really is probably going to solidify regular season champions. So certainly a lot of games to play before that, and a lot of minefields to get through. And I think the Carleton game is a great eye opener for them, in that you really can't afford to look past anybody, because you know, anybody at any specific day can knock you off. And as you had mentioned, with it being this late in the season, you can't afford any slip-ups.
Yeah, definitely a game at a time. It's a cliche, but increasingly important this time of year. In men's basketball, they had a loss against Illinois Institute of Technology, but prior to that, Donnie, a really impressive win against a very good Carleton team. So St. Mary's, I think they're one of those teams that some of the other schools, especially in the conference, they don't really want to play right now, because they're really kind of an up-and-coming team.
Absolutely, and they're playing very well right now. I think that you know, the nice thing about the Monday loss to Illinois Tech is it's a non-conference game. Really doesn't hold a whole lot of weight in terms of the season. But that Carleton win is absolutely a signature win for the Cardinals this year, and I think it shows that this team is really up and coming, and they're playing some very good basketball. They're playing everybody close, and that was one of those that it was a close game all the way to the end, and the Cardinals found a way to win. I know we've talked many times on this show about that's going to be the secret to this team right now, is finding a way to get over that hump. They're staying close. It's time for them to get over that hump, and I think the game against Carleton did that. And we talk a lot about Q Smith Pugh and Connor Kaiser and Will Swigum, Wiley Farron, and it was Kai Endall that had a career game against Carleton, getting 13 points. And so, again, it's one of those times that we get more people that are stepping to the front, kind of taking that scoring leadership role, and the more people that they can have do that, I think it's going to make it that much tougher for teams to play.
Right.
And Q was back at it against Illinois Tech with 16 points, so they're not going to shut him down, and
Right.
He's really having a great first year with St. Mary's.
What's impressive to me about Kai and Q especially is they are so well physically built. And the MIAC, of course, a physical conference in men's basketball. So I think they have sort of that muscle and that power to withstand some of those rigors.
No question. And you had mentioned when we were talking about the women about just kind of the grind of the season. And in the men's game, you're absolutely right. You add in that pure physicality of the MIAC, and I think a player like Q and a player like Kai and Will Swigum and Wiley, for that matter, they are physically stronger, and I think that certainly is boding well in terms of why they're being successful in that they are able to bang and grind and battle for rebounds and battle underneath, and so I certainly think that's one of the reasons that they're successful, is they are physically stronger than they have been in the past.
Right. All right, Donnie, the swimmers and divers are back in action again following the long Christmas break, and it was at the Jewel Gurnis Pool. St. Mary's University was a duel against Augsburg, and Donnie, another good showing, especially from some of the male swimmers this time.
Yeah, I talked a lot to Coach Bartholomew actually this morning, and she was very happy with the way the women swam, even though it was a duel and they did lose. She was very pleased with a lot of the performances. Reese Gillespie had a first and a second. Grace Van Bees had a couple of seconds. Sarah Fanning had a couple of seconds. So there were a lot of good, solid performances, and it's really that time of year. They've got one more meet this weekend at the Minnesota Challenge. It's a 2-day meet up at the University of Minnesota, and then they've got a week off as they start to taper, and then it's the 3-day MIC championships. And we've talked so many times with swimming, that's the 3 days they point to. The whole season comes down to those 3 days. So Coach Bartholomew's happy with where people are at. Mm-hmm. She feels really solid about where they are in terms of their training, and those this last competition they'll start to taper then, and hopefully be ready in 2 weeks for the conference championships.
All right, in some ways, swimming and diving, it's a long season, but it really goes quick once they're in the thick of it, and that kind of sounds like what's happening right now.
No question, it really isn't. And I know they enjoyed being home. They enjoyed competing in their home pool, and tip your caps to the men's 800 relay. They set a pool record by 10 seconds off the previous record. So they had that 4-person crew had a good swim, and it's one of those things. It's such a training sport that I got to imagine that they look forward to those meets just so that they can compete against somebody else besides themselves. So it'll be a good weekend. Again, it's at the University of Minnesota pool where the conference championships are. So another chance for them to just get familiar and get used to that pool, because it is different than ours in terms of the starting blocks and whatnot. So it'll be a good competition for them, and hopefully get them ready for the upcoming championships.
Donnie, women's and men's tennis both split their first 2 contests against Bethany Lutheran, picked up the win there, 9-0, and then losing to Carleton 8-1. That was the same scores for both women and men, but kind of the start that we expected, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think Coach Hallberg would say he was pleased with the way they performed. The impressive thing with the 9-0 wins is just how dominating they were. You look at the women's side, they lost 10 games. So you're looking at 12, 15 sets, and they only lost 3 games in those 15 sets. So it was really a dominating performance. And the guys as well. They had 2 3-setters. But they also came away with the 9-0 win, so a great start. Carleton, perennially one of the top teams in the MIAC, always a tough way to open the conference season with by far one of the best teams in the conference. But I think that Coach Hallberg saw some things that he liked, and hopefully as the men now, they've got a huge weekend this weekend with 4 matches in 3 days over in Wisconsin, so it'll be a big weekend for them. The women get to rest, and then they've got a big weekend the following weekend. So a good time for tennis. I think that the people that performed were expected to perform the way they did, and hopefully that continues as the season progresses.
And Donnie, men's track and field with 5 top 3 finishes at River Falls last weekend, so a great showing.
Yeah, great showing there. Morris Dennis, we're going to say his name a lot. He won the 400, so he's kind of getting back into the form of the outdoor when he qualified for the national championships, so he's getting into that indoor form. James Davis had another great meet. We've said his name quite a bit and really doing a great job. And Brian Ortman, again, with a 3rd place finish in the jumps. And Brandon Krogman had a great performance. Austin O'Hara had a 3rd place finish. So a lot of people doing some very good things. And then on the women's side, you got Becca Dupe with a 2nd place in the 55. And then Maria Mizzarelli finished 3rd in the pole vault. So those two kind of led the way for the Cardinal women as well.
And Donnie, in some ways I wanted to start the show talking women's hockey, but I thought it might segue better with Ben Kinne, who's coming in next if we waited. And what a big weekend they had, the women's hockey team against Augsburg. Very impressive showing, a tie and then a big win against one of the better teams in the conference.
Yeah, you take 3 points from Augsburg, you're feeling really good about yourself. And, you got to tip your hat to Jamie Henderson. She's just having a phenomenal season for the Cardinals. She got her 10th and 11th goals of the season. That's the most goals for a Cardinal woman since the 2010-11 season. So, they're playing better. And the big thing is they took that tie and then they built upon that with that 3-1 win the second day. And, we've talked so often about how they need to get more offensive scoring, and they did that in Saturday's 3-1 win. So they're playing very well. They've got 6 games left, right in the conference tournament hunt, and hopefully good things to come in these next 3 weeks.
Right. Not only does it sort of boost them in the standings a little bit, but just confidence-wise for those final 6 games, that's really what they
Absolutely,
needed.
no question. You've got to play with confidence, and we'll talk to Ben a little bit about it with the men's team. Is you've got to be confident. You've got to play with that confidence when you're worried and you're nervous and it all builds and it affects how you play. So the ladies are certainly playing very well right now, and that's 3 points from Augsburg is a great performance, and hopefully that'll just continue this weekend against Gustavus, a team that is perennially at the top of the conference standings. So it's going to be a big weekend for them.
So it was a big week in the week that was, and certainly the week coming up. And when we come back here on the Cardinals Nest, we'll take a closer look at men's hockey with assistant coach Ben Kinne. That's next here on HBC TV 25.
Want the latest news on St. Mary's University athletics? Watch the Cardinals Nest on HBC TV 25. Dean Beckman and SMU Sports Information Director Donnie Netto will talk about the past week in Cardinal athletics, highlighting the best in each Cardinal sports team. Player and coach guests will add their stories and insight each week with new shows Thursdays at 5 p.m. and replays Fridays at 6:30 p.m. and Saturdays at 7:30 a.m. on HBC TV 25.
We chose HBC because they're a local company. They have a big audience in Winona, which is the geographic group that we're looking for. Mel is very easy to work with. She's genuinely concerned about how our money is being spent, and she does everything she can to make sure we get the most for our money. She takes care of us. So whenever there's a problem, which is rarely, I know that I can go to her and she's going to take care of it.
To see how HBC advertising can help your company, call Melanie at 507-474-5802.
And we're back here on the Cardinals Nest. Dean Beckman, Donnie Netto, and Ben Kinne now joining us. Ben is the assistant coach for the men's hockey team at St. Mary's. And Ben, great to have you on the Cardinals Nest. First time on the Cardinals Nest, and really only your second year as an assistant coach at St. Mary's. So we haven't had a chance to get to know you yet here on the Cardinals Nest. So why don't we start out by having you tell us a little bit about your hockey background. I know you went to and played Division I at Bemidji State, but take us back even farther than that, kind of into your youth and high school hockey and sort of how you got started out.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in St. Paul. Right down by West 7th Street area. We're not too far from the XL Center, so
so you got
hockey,
that bug early, right?
Yeah. So hockey's kind of been our one of our staple sports in our family, and so then from there I went to Cretin-Aram Hall High School. Was fortunate to play on good teams there. Actually won a state championship there in 2006. That was a great highlight for my friends and I and my family. And then from there I went on to play 2 years of junior hockey. Won down in Santa Fe, New Mexico in the North American League. And then I went to Sioux City, Iowa in the USHL for a year. And then I spent 5 seasons at Bemidji State. And then after that, I came here, got the call from Coach Moore if I was interested in coming down here, and I said, absolutely. So it's kind of a funny story. I mean, if I didn't get the opportunity to play Division I, I probably would have came to St. Mary's with everybody else in my family. So that's kind of.
Talk a little bit about that call from Coach Moore, because you knew Coach Moore previously and worked with him a little bit in camps, correct? And that's kind of how you got to know Bill.
Yeah, Greg and I, Bill's son, are pretty much the same age. So we played fall hockey together, and then when I was younger, about squared age 8, 9, 10 years old, I attended his camp in Woodbury, Coach Moore's camp, PDP, and then as I worked up my way up, I actually ended up working for Coach Moore at that camp in Woodbury, and then from there, we kind of kept in touch. But then when I went off to school, you kind of are concentrated on those type of things at school, and then when I heard the job opened, actually my cousin Nick called me. He's the baseball coach here at St. Mary's, and I kind of talked to him a little bit about it, and he said you should definitely apply, and then so I got in touch with Coach Moore, and kind of the rest is history right now. So
how has it been as an assistant coach? Is it what you expected? Tell us a little bit about maybe your expectations coming into this job.
It's a little different because every coach is different in the sense of how they either run practice or how they go recruiting or different things. From what I've been around, at Bemidji, our head coach, he did a lot of practice. He was hands-on in practice all the time. So, Bill is really, he's more laid back in the sense that he likes to go recruiting. Bill, he can sell anybody on St. Mary's. So that's the good part that I enjoy about it. Is just Coach Moore's passion about St. Mary's. He could sell me on it. He could sell any family member or whoever, a recruiter, whatever. So, but he's done a great job of letting me kind of fit my mold, and he's let me put a lot of input in. I brought a lot of things from Bemidji that we did do, and I think that has helped out the guys a lot. A lot of it's consistency stuff and forming good habits, that type of stuff in practice that I've brought with me from Bemidji. So I think he's done a good job of letting me kind of take the reins on practice every now and then, and just teaching those habits and that consistency factor.
Being just a few years out of Bemidji, is it hard to go to practice and see these guys practicing as you're standing there without, in warm-ups rather than in the equipment?
Yeah, it's tough. Every now and then I want to jump in a drill and kind of explain it to them or show them how you want it to be done, because everybody's a different kind of learner when it comes to, some like to be told what to do, others you need to show. So, that's been the kind of the biggest adjustment for me, is learning each player individually. As much as you're trying to coach a team, you're also coaching 28 individuals. So that's been the good part and the challenging part of it. So, every now and then I'll jump in a few drills to show the guys what I'm looking for or what I want. But, I told somebody this the other day, my first time putting on the gear again was at my Cretin-Aram Hall alumni game this year, and I don't miss putting on the gear at all, but it's been fun. Putting on the coaching hat's been a lot of fun. So
Ben, I'm curious to know too. Of course, there's the on-ice coaching that you have to do, but also off-ice issues and the academic side of things. And in the WCHA, you were a 3-time all-academic honoree. And so, do you get to talk to the players much about the academic portion and making sure that they're hitting the books and the importance of that?
Yeah, the reason you're going to school is to get a degree. Hockey is just a benefit of that situation that you're in. It's a privilege to be on a team. It's not a right. So we stress academics a lot here, which is great. These kids ultimately, if you look at 95 or 90, even 99% of our roster, I would say none of them are going to play professional hockey. That's just how it all unfolds for these kids. But there are those few that go on to play. But you're really trying to build your resume and build your confidence and build build up yourself to be marketable to companies or whoever you're trying to work for, or school, or whatever it is. So, that's important to us. So I mean, I think from the last semester, we had one of our highest GPAs for men's hockey, which we were very excited about. The guys they really hit the books hard, and they take pride in getting good grades and being a top of their class, that type of stuff. So,
Ben, let's look at on ice now this year. Your team is 8-11 overall, 5-6-1 in the conference. Maybe summarize how the season has gone and what you'd like to see from them to improve.
Yeah, it's been kind of a roller coaster this year. We started out in the showcase with those 2 losses, and then we kind of came back and we played really well for most of the first half of the year. Then we kind of had a little lump at the end playing against Concordia. But since we've been back, it's been it's been frustrating for everyone involved. Last year we got a lot of bounces to go our way. Coach Moore and I were talking the other day. We didn't have one significant injury this year, and this year we're missing 5 kids that played a lot of ice for us. And not only that, when it comes to winning those close games, last year we won 5 of 6 overtime games. You take half of those away, and we're more sitting in the middle of the conference, when rather last year we were up in the second spot. So it's been a combination of things that haven't really gone our way since Christmas time, but. We've been working hard and trying to build that consistency factor back up with playing hard every night. So
with 4 games left in the season, you're still right there. I mean, you're in 5th place right now. The downside to it is you have that last week off. But how do you approach these last 2 weekends in terms of making sure the guys understand the importance of every single shift of every single game?
Yeah, I think our biggest thing right now is we just want to win 20 minutes at a time. I mean, you can't look any farther in that. I know it's hard to look at the standings and hard to not look at the future or whatever it is, but you just have to look at 20 minutes at a time. Let's win 20 minutes at a time, because if you can win 20 minutes, it builds up. Win the first period, win the second period, win the third period, you usually win the game. So that's kind of our mindset. Everything's not going to go your way. Everything's not perfect, but you got to try your hardest. So, like I like to tell the guys, hockey's a game of mistakes. But if you're making mistakes at 100% or going 100%, that's fine. But if you're making mistakes going 50%, then we got to sit down and talk about it a little bit. So,
I guess last question before we go to the break, and I know we've got a big spotlight coming up on your brother. I'd kind of like to get just your feeling in terms of coaching your brother. I mean, you're not that far apart in age.
No.
Is it a difficult thing to coach him?
I would say it is a little bit. The good thing is I understand him as a player and what he's very good at, and I kind of see his deficiencies every now and then. Probably the hardest part is kind of I want to go out there and show him how to do it and be like, you need to be doing it this way or whatever it is. And he's just a different learner than most. So when it comes to that, he needs to be shown it. He watches a lot of video with me personally, so I think that helps him out and in his development of his game. So I think he's been a great addition for us, and he's been a great addition to St. Mary's as a university as well. So
Donnie, I'm glad you asked that question. I was going to ask it if you didn't, because Bob, who will be on our student athlete spotlight in just a minute here, he's going to get the last say because he's the last segment of the program.
Yeah.
So Ben, we wanted to give you at least an
Yep.
opportunity to get a word in there.
Yep, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, Ben, thanks for being on the program, and best of luck the rest of the season here.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, stay tuned. Ricky Palermo will have the student athlete spotlight with Bob Kinne. That's coming up next here on HBC.
Integrate your business communications services with HBC. You'll be connected to the area's leader in internet and data solutions with speeds up to 1 gigabit, not to mention the most customizable and reliable telephone network in the area. Your customers and guests will enjoy crystal clear video and audio throughout your business. HBC Professional Solutions customers receive consulting and IT support, conferencing solutions, fast reliable cloud service, and more. Call 888-474-9995 to experience the HBC difference today.
Tune in for the Sports Buzz every Tuesday at 5:30 as a panel of local sports journalists tackle the hottest topics on everything from local high school and collegiate sports to regional discussion about the Twins, Brewers, Vikings, and Packers. With the Power Play Fantasy Football Challenge to the Rant of the Week and NFL Pick'em, the Sports Buzz is fast-paced and sure to entertain. That's new episodes of the Sports Buzz every Tuesday at 5:30 with replays only on HBC TV 25.
And we're back to wrap things up here on the Cardinals Nest. And before we get to the student athlete spotlight with Bob Kinne, we want to ask his brother Ben, assistant coach for the men's hockey team, just one more question. Ben, you have Gustavus this weekend, so your thoughts on Gustavus and the importance of this matchup?
Well, this is extremely important for us going forward. They're right on our heels when it comes to conference play. The one thing about Gussies is they're always going to give effort. They're a very disciplined team, very well coached team. So we're going to see that this weekend.
All right. So Ben, thanks a lot. And now the student athlete spotlight on your brother, Bob Kinne. Here's Ricky Palermo.
Meet Bob Kinne. He stands at 5'11". He plays center for the St. Mary's Cardinals. He's in his junior year, and he's basically just like everyone else on the team, except that his older brother is his assistant coach. So this week, I talked to Bob, his head coach Bill Moore, and his line mate Marty Gruss to learn all about the Kinnes and their unique relationship.
He's like an older brother. I mean, I'm sure most people that have an older brother, I mean, they pick on you every once in a while, but they're always there to have your back. Wherever I need a question or just to ask him about something, he's always there. It's a really easy transition into hockey, playing for him. We played in the backyard all the time. There used to be a rink just across the street behind our house. So I used to tag along with him and all of his friends when we were younger. So it was pretty fun. Got to play around with them. When he was in high school, they used to skate about every Friday night together with his friends, and I would try to tag along and try to play along with them, but didn't always work out the best, but I tried my hardest.
All right, so Marty, you've been playing with Bob for the last couple of years, and you've been coached by his brother Ben. How do you see the relationship form from, a player's perspective?
Obviously, from a player's perspective, it's a pretty good relationship. Coming to the rink every day, it's very businesslike. That relationship, the brother-to-brother relationships put aside once they walk through the door at the rink here. And it's good because he not only holds us, the players, accountable, but Ben also holds his brother Bob accountable, which is really good. And then away from the rink, obviously, you see the brotherly connection, and I think it brings a good bond to the team because then we get to know Ben on a different side than just being our coach. We see him as a different person outside of here.
Being the head coach, how do you manage them, from that perspective?
Well, I think one of the things that we've tried to do is if there's anything that Bob needs to hear other than just some simple corrections, I take care of it rather than Ben. Because, I've coached my kids before. It's tough, and I think at the beginning of the season there was a little bit of an adjustment period for Ben and Bob, but it's just way easier if I take care of talking to Bob as much as possible.
Every once in a while we get a little heated at each other, but it's nothing that you would never see from two brothers that are only 4 years apart. But it really is great to have him. He's probably one of the better coaches I've ever had, and he's just very knowledgeable about the game.
I guess I would just say the thing that I noticed the most about both of them is their work ethic.
Ben being the older brother kind of has a little bit more leverage in that argument a little bit of the time, but Bob's not afraid to get his nose dirty when it comes to arguing with his brother. So.
Any funny stories you got for me?
I don't know. I think the best story probably would have to be when Ben comes around and shoots basketballs with us and pretty much shows us all how it's done, and I think Bob gets a little embarrassed. So.
When I was in grade school and he was in high school, him and his friends developed a league called the PHL, and the playground by our house was called Palace, so we call it the Palace Hockey League. There was 4 different teams, and we all had made sweatshirts and hats with like the PHL logo on them, and lucky enough, he let me be on one of the teams with him, so I got to have the hat and the sweatshirt like all of him and his friends. I'd like to think that's why we all got as athletic as we are and got as good to where we are today. I have to give a lot of credit to him and my parents and just them helping me develop as a player and as a person.